Going to get started with the 1-2 exit slip here. We're going to be dealing with emperor penguins in this case. We're going to be looking at this data and we're going to look at their weights. And we have a list of a bunch of different penguin weights up here at the top. And our goal is to construct a dot plot to represent the penguin weight data so we can kind of see what's going on. So in this case with the dot plot, you guys might remember making these and using X's when you're in elementary school or in previous years. We're actually going to use dots now instead of X's. Okay, don't forget to put your totals on here or your titles and fill out these blanks. It's about emperor penguin weights, so that's what I titled it. Then down below you got to tell what the dots represent, and in this case it's your weight in pounds that we're talking about of these weights. Okay, so to make the dot plot, simply just putting these dots on here. I did that for you to save a little time, but make sure you stay organized. Okay, on here we've got 58, so I went down and put a dot on 58. 65. And I put a dot on 65. And make sure you count up how many have total and make sure you have the same amount of dots. So I went through and crossed those off when I did it the first time to make sure I'm stay organized and I don't accidentally forget something in the data set, because if I don't get this right, when I get down on my data landmarks, my data is going to be flawed and not accurate because I didn't get everything on there. So you got to pay attention to detail when you're doing these. Okay, so there's the first part on question A. Question B, we're going to use the dot plot to find these data landmarks. Okay, the maximum, minimum, range, mode, and then I added in the median there. We remember the maximum means the largest here. The largest one was 65 pounds, so 65 is my max. And the minimum was 58. And there were two of them there that weighed 58, but that's still the minimum weight of these penguins. What I see a lot of kids do is they see the number line says 57, so sometimes they'll say 57 is the minimum, or they'll say 66 is the max. Usually your number line goes a little further than your dots, so don't look at the numbers necessarily. Look at where the biggest dot is or where the smaller dots are to get your data for the minimum and the maximum. The range of the data we learned is your range is the difference between the greatest and the least. Okay, so with the greatest one was 65 pounds, this penguin, and the lightest ones, there were a couple of them, but the lightest weight was 58 pounds. So if I subtract that, I see this range between the least and the greatest. And there's just a range of 7 pounds here, so not a huge range when it comes to these emperor penguins. They're all pretty similar in size then. Okay, some are just a little bigger than others. Mode, most, we talk about which one shows up the most. And sometimes kids confuse that with the biggest. Mode, in this case, is which dots show up the most. Okay, what's the most common penguin weight? In this case, we see we have two of them. 3 penguins weighed 61 and 3 penguins weighed 62. So we actually have 2 modes, and that's perfectly fine. Sometimes you could have no modes. If they were all the same, there would be no mode. Okay, so that can vary a little bit, but in this case, we have 2 weights that showed up the most. Okay, the median then we added down here. The median is the one in the middle. There's a couple different ways we could go about finding the middle weight of these penguins. If I were going to look at this list up here, I would have to put them in order from least to greatest. So sometimes that takes a little more time. Some kids like that. I'm not going to show that right now because it's already in order from least to greatest down here on the dot plot. So I'm going to go ahead and just cross off, in this case, the highs and the lows. And I always start from the bottom when I start crossing off. So this 65 pound one would cancel out this 68. And we're going to work to find that middle one. This one would take care of that one. And again, keep stopping. If I have 2 here, I have 2 here, and keep starting from the bottom. So this one would cancel this one, this one, this one high, one low. And what we find in this case is I have 2 of them in the middle, okay, which is the one that's a little more complex. So technically, neither one of these is the median, okay? The median is halfway between. So halfway between 61 and 62 would be 61.5, or the average of these two would end up 61.5. You could add these 2 up and divide by 2 to get that, but you can use your number sense and math knowledge to know 61.5 would be part way between there. So 61.5 would be our median in this case. Sometimes you only have one that's in the dead middle, and that would be the median, but in this case, we had 2 in the middle. So we have to find the middle of that middle, which is 61.5 in this case. Okay, so you got to make sure you know how to do a dot plot and find all of these data landmarks and know your vocabulary words and what these mean and how to find them.